Imagine waking up one morning and discovering that civilization has completely changed overnight. Not because of zombies. Not because of aliens. Not because of some Hollywood-style apocalypse. But because history has already produced disasters so devastating, so terrifying, and so deadly that even the most famous fictional apocalypses struggle to compare. Picture this. The streets are empty. People are terrified to leave their homes. Entire cities are collapsing. Governments are powerless. Families are disappearing. And nobody knows when, or if, it will end. Now ask yourself, would you survive? Because today, we are traveling through 6 real historical disasters that may have been even worse than a zombie apocalypse. And the frightening part? Every single one of them actually happened. Let's begin. The first disaster takes us to Europe in the year 1347. A merchant ship arrives at a busy port. At first, nothing seems unusual. But hidden inside the ship is something that will change human history forever. The Black Death. Imagine standing in a crowded medieval city. No modern medicine.
No antibiotics.
No understanding of bacteria. No hospitals capable of handling a crisis. Then suddenly people begin getting sick. Neighbors vanish. Entire households die within days. The disease spreads so quickly that some cities cannot bury their dead fast enough. Now imagine seeing carts moving through the streets every morning collecting bodies. Think about that. Not 1 or 2 people. Thousands. Then tens of thousands. Then millions. Historians estimate that the Black Death may have killed between 30% and 60% of Europe's population. Imagine losing half the people you know. Friends, family, workers, farmers, doctors, priests, entire communities disappearing. But here's the terrifying part. The disease didn't care who you were, rich or poor, powerful or powerless. Everyone was vulnerable. Would you stay in the city? Would you flee? Most people who fled simply carried the disease somewhere else. And that's where survival became almost impossible. But even this wasn't the only catastrophe history had planned. Let's travel to the year 1453. You are standing behind the enormous walls of Constantinople. For over 1,000 years, this city has survived invasions, wars, and sieges. Many believe it is impossible to conquer. Then an army appears. Not thousands, tens of thousands. And they bring something the world has never truly seen before. Massive cannons. Imagine hearing explosions that shake the ground beneath your feet. Walls that protected generations suddenly begin cracking. Every day the bombardment continues. Every day the city grows weaker. Food becomes scarce. Sleep becomes impossible. Fear spreads everywhere. Now ask yourself, how long could you stay calm knowing an enemy army is slowly breaking through the walls protecting your entire world? Then it happens. The defenses collapse. Invaders flood into the city. Chaos erupts. The Byzantine Empire, which had survived for over 1,000 years, disappears in a matter of hours. Think about how quickly entire civilizations can vanish. Not gradually. Not over centuries. Sometimes in a single day. But here's where things get even worse. Some disasters don't arrive through armies or disease. Sometimes nature itself becomes the enemy. Imagine living in Pompeii. The year is 79 AD. The city is thriving. Markets are full. Children are playing. Merchants are working. Everything feels normal. Then the ground begins to shake. At first, people aren't overly concerned. Small earthquakes happen frequently. But this time something different is happening beneath the surface. Mount Vesuvius is awakening. Picture looking toward the mountain and seeing a gigantic column of ash shooting into the sky. The cloud grows higher and higher. Darkness spreads across the landscape. Ash begins falling like snow. The air becomes difficult to breathe. Panic spreads. People start running. But here's the problem. Most don't understand what's happening. And by the time they realize the danger, it is already too late. Superheated clouds of gas and volcanic material race down the mountain at incredible speeds. Temperatures soar. Entire neighborhoods disappear beneath layers of ash. Within hours, a thriving city becomes a frozen moment in history. Imagine having only minutes to make life or death decisions. Would you know where to go? Would you leave immediately? Or would you wait too long? Most people think survival is about strength. History repeatedly shows it's often about timing. But the next disaster proves that even surviving the first wave doesn't guarantee safety. Fast forward to 1918. The world is already exhausted. The First World War is ending. Millions have died. People desperately want life to return to normal. Then a new threat appears. The Spanish flu. Imagine hearing rumors about a strange illness. At first it seems similar to other diseases. But then healthy young adults begin dying unexpectedly. Entire military camps become overwhelmed. Hospitals run out of beds. Doctors work around the clock. Cities close schools. Public gatherings disappear. Masks become common. Sound familiar? Now imagine facing all of this without modern intensive care units, without antiviral drugs, without advanced medical equipment. The virus spreads across continents with astonishing speed. In some places, entire communities become sick simultaneously. Families lose multiple members within weeks. Historians estimate that around 50 million people may have died worldwide, possibly more. Think about that. A death toll greater than many wars combined. But here's the surprising truth. The biggest danger wasn't always the virus itself. It was how quickly society became overwhelmed. When too many people become sick at once, every system begins to struggle. Healthcare, transportation, food supply, public services. Everything becomes vulnerable. And that's a lesson every survival expert understands. The greatest threats are often the ones that create chain reactions. But nature still wasn't finished demonstrating its power. Imagine waking up during the Little Ice Age. No, this wasn't a Hollywood ice apocalypse. It was something much slower, and in many ways, much crueler. Temperatures across large parts of the world begin dropping. Growing seasons become shorter. Harvests become unreliable. Rivers freeze. Weather patterns become unpredictable. Now imagine being a farmer whose entire survival depends on crops. One failed harvest is dangerous. 2 failed harvests are terrifying. Several failed harvests can destroy entire communities. Food shortages spread. Famine appears. Economic systems weaken. Migration increases. Conflict becomes more common. Think about how dependent we are on stable climate conditions. Now imagine those conditions slowly turning against you year after year. Not for weeks. Not for months. For generations. This is where survival becomes psychologically exhausting. Because unlike an invasion or an eruption, there's no clear ending. Every year becomes a new question. Will the crop survive? Will food prices rise again? Will winter be worse than the last one? Sometimes the most dangerous disasters aren't the fastest. They're the ones that slowly drain hope. But even the Little Ice Age was overshadowed by something extraordinary. Imagine the year is 1815. You're living somewhere on Earth and have never heard of a volcano called Tambora. Most people haven't. Then Tambora erupts. And not just erupts. It produces one of the most powerful volcanic eruptions in recorded history. The explosion is so massive that people hundreds of miles away hear sounds resembling cannon fire. Ash rises high into the atmosphere. But here's where things become truly unbelievable. The eruption doesn't just affect nearby regions. It affects the entire planet. Sunlight becomes weaker. Global temperatures drop. The following year becomes known as the year without a summer. Imagine snow falling in June. Crops failing across continents. Food shortages spreading worldwide. Livestock dying. Communities facing starvation. All because of a volcano many people have never even seen. Now ask yourself, how would you react if food suddenly became scarce everywhere? What if there was no unaffected region to depend on? This is where survival stops being local and becomes global. A single natural event reshaped weather patterns across Earth. That's the kind of power nature possesses. And it's easy to forget, because most days, nature feels predictable, safe, manageable. History repeatedly reminds us otherwise. So after witnessing all these disasters, what can we learn? The first lesson is surprising. The biggest threat is rarely what people expect. During the Black Death, many feared strangers. The real danger was microscopic. In Pompeii, many feared earthquakes. The real threat came from the eruption itself. During pandemics, people fear illness. But social disruption often becomes equally dangerous. The second lesson is even more important. Panic kills. Again and again throughout history, people who remained calm often made better decisions. They evacuated earlier, adapted faster, conserved resources, recognized risks before others did. And finally, the greatest survival advantage isn't strength. It isn't speed. It isn't even luck. It's information. Understanding what's happening around you. Recognizing danger early. Adapting before everyone else realizes there's a problem. That's what separates many survivors from victims. So let's return to the original question. Which is worse? A zombie apocalypse? Or these real historical disasters? The answer may surprise you. At least with zombies, the threat is obvious. You can see it. You know what you're facing. But the Black Death was invisible. The Spanish flu traveled silently. The Little Ice Age unfolded over decades. Tambora changed the climate of an entire planet. And Pompeii showed how quickly normal life can disappear. History's greatest disasters weren't terrifying because monsters appeared. They were terrifying because ordinary people woke up expecting a normal day, and instead found themselves living through events that would change the world forever. So would you survive these disasters? Maybe. Maybe not. But after looking at what humanity has already endured, one thing becomes clear. The most frightening apocalypses aren't the fictional ones. They're the real disasters that history proved can happen when disease, war, climate, and nature decide to remind humanity just how fragile civilization truly is.